Hello Year 9 and 10. Today you'll be revising Poppies. To get you started, I want you to look at the following images and write down what each of them could symbolise. Try to write a minimum of 3 for each. There's no real right or wrong answer so long as it makes sense. For instance, a skull and crossbone could represent pirates, danger and death, but we know it doesn't represent holidays and sunshine, so make your guesses logical. Pause the video now. As ever, my interpretations might be a little bit different to yours, but the more meaning you can squeeze out of an image or a word, the better. If there's anything I've mentioned which you've missed, please add it to your notes. The first image is a poppy. These symbolise the dead who lost their lives during battle. During World War I, across northern France and in Flanders fields in Belgium, poppies grew on the war-savaged fields. Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae wrote a poem in 1915 entitled In Flanders Fields, and it channels the voices of the dead soldiers through the poppies. The poem was published in 1915, so just 1 year into the First World War. So this symbolism began in the First World War, but has since come to represent all soldiers who have given up their lives for us in subsequent wars. As well as dead soldiers, the colour of the flowers can represent blood. They also represent peace and sleep. The second image is treasure. This could represent wealth, royalty, or just something precious, but the treasure chest itself could represent secrets, security, and new opportunities. The sewing needle and thread could stereotypically represent home, motherhood and thriftiness. Also the make, do and mend philosophy which came about in World War II. On a deeper metaphorical level, it could also represent stitching together ideas or mending life. The next image is a dove. We most typically see doves as representing peace. They could also represent freedom. Early Romans and Greeks saw them as a symbol of devotion, love and family care. Christianity and the Bible view doves as a symbol of peace and love, but also as a symbol of the Holy Spirit during the baptism of Jesus Christ. Finally, the blackthorns symbolise danger, pain and fear. These too could have religious connotations with Jesus' crown of thorns. For those of you who've attempted the Star Challenge, Armistice Day is commemorated every year on the 11th of November at 11 a.m. It signals the signing of the armistice in 1918 for the ending of the hostilities between the Allies of World War I and the Germans. Remembrance Sunday, so the Sunday closest to the 11th of November every year, commemorates soldiers who fell in World War I and subsequent wars. So today you'll be revising Poppies by Jane Weir, because this is another poem in the AQA Power and Conflict cluster, and you'll be doing comprehension questions and answering an essay question. Okay, what can you remember about the poem Poppies? Try to write a minimum of 3 details that you can remember, and for those of you who want to stretch yourselves, try to write down any quotations that you can remember from the poem. Pause the video now. Poppies is written from the point of view of a mother who has lost her son in war. It is unclear which war, though it could be any from World War I to present day. It is deliberately ambiguous so numerous people can identify with it. When Poppies was first published in 2009, British soldiers were fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. The poem is made up of 4 stanzas of irregular length, so they are 6, 11, 12 and 6 lines each. It has been written in free verse with no regular rhyme or rhythm scheme. This, alongside its first-person narration, makes it conversational. It helps us to apply this poem to any parent whose child has been killed in battle. We're going to look at some vocabulary which you may not understand from the poem. Just write down the words you do not know and their definitions. Crimped is when something is folded into pleats. Bias is to be prejudiced against a person or a group of people. Let's have a look at prejudice for those of you who don't understand by breaking the word into its prefix pre, which means before, and its root word judge. We can ascertain that it is to prejudge a person or a group of people. This is normally in relation to, for example, race, gender, sexuality, or disability. So casting judgment over someone because of the group we classify them in. Finally, to be intoxicated is to be bewildered and lightheaded. We normally link this to being drunk or having taken drugs. Choose one of these words to explode in your mind map. Try to choose one which is new to you. It's time to read the poem. You should note that I've put them on the slides in the stanzas which appear in the poem. So the reason for the irregular length is this is how the author intended to split the lines. Poppies. 3 days before Armistice Sunday and poppies had already been placed on individual war graves. Before you left, I pinned one onto your lapel, crimped petals, spasms of paper red, disrupting a blockade of yellow bias binding around your blazer. Pause the video now and attempt the questions below. Number 1. The individual war graves is significant as it represents each person lost. It is very easy when hearing about the millions of people who die in action to start thinking about soldiers as just another statistic. This shows us that all of their lives are important. Number 2. As mentioned before, this poem is deliberately ambiguous in places so it can be applied to millions of soldiers. By using the pronoun you and not mentioning the narrator's son's name, this helps to make him an almost everyman type figure for a soldier. In the same line, we go from the public sphere of the war graves to the private threshold of their house. It emphasises that although he has died publicly, fighting for us, his mother will always view him in the private sphere of their home. The caesura, so the full stop after graves, emphasises the separation between public and private, but the fact that it is also on the same line shows that the lines are blurred between public and private. Also, by speaking in the second person, by using the pronoun you, it is like she wants to speak to her son directly one last time. Number 3. This poem should be read in 2 ways. The narrator saying goodbye to her son before he leaves for the first day of secondary school, and the narrator saying goodbye to him in the same place as he goes off to war. By pinning a poppy on his lapel, this both foreshadows his death and is ironic as it tells of a time she has to wear one to commemorate her son. Another interpretation is that she might be unknowingly marking him for death. Number 4. Crimp describes the folds of the paper poppy, but it is also the beginning of a lexical set of sewing which runs through the poem. Spasms and disrupting are negative words which help to create a tense atmosphere. Blockade is significant as it's part of a semantic field or lexical set of war. Number 5. Yellow bias is literally the thin yellow fabric which is sewn around the edge of the lapel of a school blazer. However, the colour yellow has connotations of cowardliness, so perhaps the blockade of yellow could be a cowardly enemy, or it could be our own cowardly bias, fearing for our soldiers going off to war. Stanza 2. Sellotape bandaged around my hand. I rounded up as many white cat hairs as I could. Smooth down your shirt's upturned collar. Steal the softening of my face. I wanted to graze my nose across the tip of your nose. Play at being Eskimos like we did when you were little. I resisted the impulse to run my fingers through the gelled black thorns of your hair. All my words flattened, rolled, turned into felt. You should note I've written number 5 twice by accident. Pause the video and answer these questions. Number 5. The significance of the mother's actions with sellotape is that she is being tender and maternal. This is an ironic contrast for what he is about to face. She has no way of protecting him nor helping him once he leaves her house, but she is being very caring and wanting to help him to look his best. Again, this could be for his first day of school, or it could be for him leaving to join the army. The imagery of a bandage could also be a metaphor for the bandages needed on war patients. Number 6. Steeled refers to the hard metal or to trying to stay firm and controlled. This juxtaposes the word softening, which tells us that she wants to cry but is trying to put on a brave face in front of her son. Number 7. An Eskimo kiss is rubbing noses with someone else. This alludes back to his childhood and is another tender action of love between them. This tells us she is aching for him to be young again, as that was when she could protect him best. The word graze on line 11 adds to the lexical set of injury along with spasm and bandage. Number 8. The imagery of the black thorns as his gelled hair could be interpreted in several ways. This could symbolise him as a teenager becoming more concerned about the way he looks and therefore taking care to style his hair with gel. It could represent the barbed wire around the trenches in World War I, therefore representing danger as well as protection. However, it could also be the agonising crown of thorns which Jesus was made to wear on the cross, thereby the narrator viewing her son as someone who was sacrificed for us. Number 9. There's a lexical set of sewing in line 17 with the words flattened, rolled and felt. It stereotypically associates the narrator's voice with home and all the comfort and care put into nurturing her son. It could also imply that the narrator is trying to stitch together the gaps left in her words as she doesn't know how to say goodbye to him, both in the flesh and now that he is dead. Stanza 3. As line 18 is enjambment from the previous stanza, I'm going to start reading from the end of the previous stanza. All my words flattened, rolled, turned into felt, slowly melting. I was brave as I walked with you to the front door. Threw it open, the world overflowing like a treasure chest. A split second and you were away, intoxicated. After you'd gone, I went into your bedroom, released a songbird from its cage. Later, a single dove flew from the pear tree, and this is where it had led me. Skirting the churchyard walls, my stomach busy, making tucks, darts, pleats, hatless, without a winter coat or reinforcements of scarf, gloves. Pause the video to answer the questions. Number 10. Slowly melting shows that she's wilting inside. She's crying. It's been enjambed with the previous stanza to show that there is no end to her grief. Number 11. The simile, the world overflowing like a treasure chest, shows the endless opportunities the world has to offer. The treasure is important as our world can provide wealth and other forms of successes. The treasure could also symbolise his freedom and adventure. Naively, he's not taken into account the world's dangers. Number 12. Intoxicated basically means drunk. He is drunk with the possibilities the world has to offer. He is happy and excited, not considering any of the pitfalls. It is important that his being intoxicated and having disappeared is done in a split second, according to the narrator on the previous line. It feels like it has been no time at all. The full stop after intoxicated is also significant, as it symbolises the end of his life. Number 13. Released a songbird from its cage is powerful imagery which could also have numerous meanings. Perhaps the mother is the songbird and she's allowing her emotions out, allowing herself to cry, which she wasn't doing in front of him. He could also be the songbird, and it could be a metaphor for releasing her son, allowing herself to start coming to terms with her loss. Number 14. Once again, we have the extended metaphor of sewing. The lexical set includes words like tucks, darts, and pleats, which again could be seen in terms of the mother providing protection. But the fact that it is her stomach making tucks, darts, and pleats tells us that her stomach is churning with emotion. There are also references to warm winter clothes. She has been exposed by her grief and is using her clothing as reinforcement, as she puts it, to protect herself from the world. Stanza 4. On reaching the top of the hill, I traced the inscriptions on the war memorial, leaned against it like a wishbone. The dove pulled freely against the sky, an ornamental stitch. I listened, hoping to hear your playground voice catching on the wind. Pause the video and answer the questions. Number 15. The simile is I traced the inscriptions of the war memorial, leaned against it like a wishbone. This could represent her looking through the names of the dead and wishing her son's name wasn't there. Also, wishbones are found over the heart. We typically break wishbones to make a wish, so this could show metaphorically that her heart is broken. Number 16. We have a repeated image of the dove, as it was also mentioned in line 25. As previously explained, this could represent peace. So for her son, war has now ended and he is finally at peace. Or maybe she's coming to terms or trying to make peace with the loss of her son. Also, it is quite a Christian symbol, so the line, the dove pulled freely against the sky, could represent his soul being taken to heaven. Number 17. She is listening in the hope of hearing his playground voice catching in the wind. This shows a deep longing to go back in time to a simpler and happier moment in their lives. She wishes she could be with her son. It is tragic and highlights her yearning. Just hearing his voice again would be such a comfort to her. And finally, if you've done the star challenge, there could be several reasons for the use of enjambment and caesura, and for each line it will be different, so I'm not going to go through all of them. But essentially, the enjambment of the poem, so going from one line to another without much of a break, shows that she is speaking in almost a stream of consciousness. So she's not really pausing and making much of a distinction between her son's private and his public life, nor is she making much of a distinction between him as a child and him as a young man. As for the caesura, there aren't many long pauses midway through the lines, but where we have them, it is almost like the narrator is pausing to try and savour the memory of her son. Your question today is, how is the sense of loss conveyed in Poppies and one other poem in the Power and Conflict cluster? By now you should have revised Kamikaze, so that could be a good one for you to compare it to. This week you will also be revising Remains, so you can wait to answer this question once you have watched Miss Jewis's video. So your point might be that Weir conveys a sense of loss through the memory of the narrator, through an expression of public loss with soldiers versus the private loss of her son. Remember, we say the narrator for the voice of the person saying the poem, as we do not know her name, and it's not the same as the author's voice. Weir has never lost a son in battle. Make sure you choose quotations with devices so you can show off your technical vocabulary and explain its effects. Try to provide a minimum of 2 explanations per quotation. If you zoom into a word and not a device, write its word type, so is it a noun, adjective, verb, adverb, etc. As for context, this is not a context-heavy poem as it's not about a specific war, but you can mention the importance of the symbol of the poppy from the First World War and discuss how this has come to symbolise everyone who has given their lives for us in battle in the wars since the Great War. As mentioned earlier, this was written around the time of the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, so you can mention those as well. Once you have finished, send your work to your teacher for feedback. Pause the video now. Finally, select between 2 and 4 quotations from Poppies and create a revision tool for you to memorise these quotes and their meanings. Write the technical language within it as well. Well done for your hard work. I hope you now have a deeper understanding of Poppies. Take care of yourselves. Bye.